Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. We now have our wellness hour. And by the way, every hour, I had a call this morning when I was answering a consult, and they said, what hours are available for calls? I said, all hours except the first hour Friday, when we're answering your questions that you pose on our order line, which is now operational again. It'll be perfect here shortly. And we also have if you want to call it, we have it set up so that you're going to get your calls answered much more quickly and clearly and a lot crisper sound as well. So that's another improvement. Ron Patterson, we're talking about lumen photon, and I call it life therapy, like light therapy, because the force of life in your body and all living things is infrared light. The way to describe it is the vibration of a biological molecule in a water solution. When they do astrophysics and bioastrophysics, when they're looking at biological life forms that could be distant planets, they look for spectral frequencies in not only the mineral content but the presence of water. And the reason is water is a informational superconductor, because all living things are an envelope of membranes, bilipid membrane, that acts as a liquid crystal supercomputer. It literally operates as a parallel computing supercomputer. So every membrane, including your nucleoplasm and your cells around your DNA, the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi apparatus, and especially the cell membrane, which is now connected between tight junctions and collagen fiber interlacing. The biophotons travel not only down the water but along the proline side groups and through the phenolic side group molecules, if you want to call it the arms of the proline, that connect through all the fascial tissues of your body, and along the myelinated nerve fibers and non-myelinated nerve fiber tracts, act as conduits for information. When you put light in, light therapy, far near infrared light therapy, you increase informational transfer, so you activate more DNA, you increase circulation, you increase stem cell activation, you increase detoxification, you raise the electron density of the cytochromes, so you raise the pH and of the tissue instantly, and you raise the ability for the body to have enough energy to remove heavy metals and toxic chemicals from the body and the cell. So it does all these things. So we have, for example, this morning I had a gentleman who consulted me. He had an aneurysm that supposedly his doctor said was caused by hypertension. Well, it's not so much caused by hypertension. It's caused by the presence of elevated blood pressure, which is a nitric oxide metabolism problem, and vasospasm, or thick blood, we call a high rheologic blood, where the blood is non-Newtonian fluid dynamics is too thick. Yeah, and what happened is that the blood is thicker, and as a result, that thick blood, or that blood with nitric oxide, is going to cause more troubles. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to reverse that. Now, he had visual loss and visual disturbances and vertigo, and what I discerned is that from what he had was probably an aneurysm with some temporary loss of blood and some permanent damage to a small percentage of cells, but a temporary loss of circulation to parts of the we call the visual tract, to go from the optic nerve head to the geniculate nucleus that crosses over at the sphenopalatine fossa behind his eyes, and then crosses to the occipital cortex in the inferior areas of the occipital cortex that actually create an image in the back of your brain. Now, to restore his brain, I'm not only giving him nutraceuticals. I started off with Cognition Plus, Brain Power, which has been pulsatile to improve microcirculation, and DHA, which is going to stimulate the formation of new neurocytes, new neurons, or astrocytes. And then that'll be the starting protocol. We'll add other things to that, such as mountain red velvet, such as other factors. But light therapy is going to improve his brain, so he probably should, after a trial of a month, be getting a lumen photon therapy and start with frequency number 3, because the neural tissue, believe it or not, has the same ontogeny as the skin of your body. It turns out that it's called neuroectoderm, which is why it's the same ontogeny, the same kind of background or sources. So it has similar frequencies to the skin. The skin is the second largest sensory organ in your body beside your brain, and it is by physical weight the largest organ in your body. You have taste receptors, vibration receptors, sound receptors, and light receptors in your skin, even though they're a smaller percentage than those in your eyes. And what's happened is that all of these communicate through light, vibration of molecules in solution. Interesting, isn't it? So you look at the bioplasmatic physics of it. If I wanted to create a weapon, which I don't want to publish how I did this, and how I discovered it and created the energy transfer equations 32 years ago and presented to a panel of biophysicists, at the University of Calgary, Dr. Dr. Rollins, and a panel of MDs and PhDs. You simply tune into the harmonic frequency of whichever enzyme you want to affect negatively, or biological process, and you've got a jamming frequency, which is why Turley-Q lights are so dangerous. Now, when you use light therapy with far infrared light, you can take somebody with a concussion to their head, a retinal damage, a person that has basically astrocytes that are no longer firing properly because their metabolism has been injured sufficiently, they don't have a action potential, they don't form a neural network. That hypoxia you improve with nutraceuticals and enzymatics, mild hyperbaric oxygen, and lumen photon, which is transcranial lumen photon light therapy. So that's why if someone has a concussion, I know what organic acids and other tests to do to prove they had it. If they've had a stroke, or this gentleman had what we call a post-stroke, which is most likely what's called a lacunar infarct, where they actually leak blood along the aneurysmal endothelial lining into the area. It's the free iron that upregulates through the Fenton reaction, peroxynitrate and hydroperoxy radical, and I know how to turn it off. And you can actually measure the turned off metabolites in the urine. So when people say you can't measure it, Dr. Deagle, they're just wrong. They talk to the wrong doctor. And that may seem arrogant, but I'm really ticked off at doctors that don't ask enough questions to realize how ignorant they are, or try to pursue the answers to find out why they don't have the answers. There are answers, and we can perfect those if we challenge them. I'm not telling people that I know everything, but I'm telling them I know some really good questions, and I do know a number of things that I've tested and tried, and you can prove with a SPECT scan or positron emission tomogram scan with the positronic glucose called fluorodeoxyglucose that's positronically labeled electrons. They're opposite charge. You can do a SPECT blood flow scan, you do a quantitative EEG, and you can prove it, and test with organic acids, etc. So you can map out the exact territory where the problem is. This is not guesswork. This is imaging studies that are available right now to the most advanced radiologists. So, an organic acid studies done like at William Shaw's lab in Overland Park, Kansas, Great Plains, at Genova Lab Metametrics, at Doctors Data in Chicago, a number of labs, all federally certified. So light therapy there's no health condition that won't help. I don't care if you're balding or you're getting vertigo because you had a lacunar infarct from an aneurysm that leaked. I don't care if you've had ventriculitis or choroiditis of your choroid plexus caused by too many needles in your back because they're trying to do spinal injections for steroids to try to stop arachnoiditis, which they actually can cause. I don't care if you've had a compressive neuropathy from, quote, spinal stenosis. Lumen photon therapy is going to help. Along with, of course, other nutraceuticals will reduce the swelling like Inflamax, cell defense, and things like tendon mender, because a lot of time it's the swelling of the connective tissues along the ligaments and the connective tissues around the exit foramen that actually causes the problems with the dura mater and the inflammation that causes the nerve fiber tracts to be inflamed. So light therapy doesn't matter if it's peripheral neuropathy in your feet, doesn't matter if it's an inflamed meniscus in your knee, pelvic pain because of your period, chest pain because of coronary artery spasm, because of elevated homocysteine. I don't care if it's because you've got, colitis because you've got irritable bowel or ulcerative colitis. I don't care if it's a respiratory problem with chronic sinus infections because you've got osteomyelitis of the sinus cavities and the sphenopalatine wing of the sphenoid bone. On a CT scan, we can reverse that with the right nutraceuticals and with lumen photon therapy. And people who say, no, you can't, Dr. Deagle, I said, we'll do a baseline study. I'll tell you what it has to do with your doctors. You can do a nasal endoscopy of your sinuses. You can do a coronal CT scan. And you can do nasal cultures that go off to a specialty lab looking for fungi because they're the primary infection of chronic sinus infections. It's not bacteria. They're only secondary. It's fungi.
Yeah,
when you use light therapy, things respond. Interesting,
Take advantage of this man's knowledge and his willingness to spread the good news.
Yeah, I teach doctors and patients every day around the world.
Yep.
And I challenge them, ask better questions than me and I will listen.
Yeah.
Don't ask better questions and I'll teach you my questions and then we'll both find the answers.
Yeah.
The most important thing is to ask better questions.
And then listen.
What if Americans could...
Welcome back, and we have Dr. Milda Toffel, DDS, engineering degree, and probably the best superstore in the world for not only equipment to measure the electrotoxicity in your world, but also to remediate, to block it, to protect yourself physically with garments and with shields, and to protect your electronic equipment from things like electromagnetic pulse, which could happen after a coronal mass ejection. It could also happen after even event horizon activity, somewhere even some distance from us toward the center of the galaxy. If you get a gravity wave, it'll do the same thing. Or the movement of a red dwarf star, which is not a brown dwarf, a red dwarf, which is 200 times the magnetic flux field of the sun, even though it's as little as 1/10 its size, it has 200 times more magnetic flux field. And there is fairly good evidence that there is a red dwarf moving from the Oort cloud into the inner solar systems through the southern ecliptic. The fact is that those are just some of the things that are happening on a galactic level. Physically, we have a Fukushima-style reactor on the outside of your home called a smart meter frying your brain. We have the children walking around with cell phones snapped to their head and often on the side of their head, frying the insular area of their temporal cortex and their eighth cranial nerve while they're literally texting, like I call the fingers of lightning, the thumbs of lightning, where they get, we call it extensor pollicis tenosynovitis, bilateral, and the diagnosis is discontinue texting for the next 2 months and do not return to the level of texting ever again. But we have that, plus people walk around their home, they get dimmer switches, they got these curlicue lights giving off harmonic radiation that is the same as mercury poisoning. We've got step-down transformers with everything plugged in the house. We've got dirty electricity coming through the water and the wires and magnetite in the subsoil earth that people like Dr. Sam Millam can take his oscilloscope. I've got one of them now. And I walk around and say, oh my gosh, look at all of this dirty electricity. It's a swarm of signals to jam your cellular communications because, in a sense, the cellular network of your body is Wi-Fi. So if you bring in the bad Wi-Fi signals, the Wi-Fi of your body gets jammed. Bad news. And we know with the bees, Einstein has attributed to the comment that if the bees go, we have 4 years left before all we have left is gruel, which means only the food that doesn't taste good is going to be left if the pollinating bees are gone. And that's just one of the side effects of the electrotoxins, which I think in many ways are as bad or worse than Fukushima Daiichi radiotoxins or groundwater contamination with chemotherapy and doping agents from microchip industry or whatever. It's pretty bad stuff, and you can remediate it, you can reduce it, which you can't do with other things, but you can reduce it. You can reduce it in your own home or business if you have the right equipment, because you can't smell or taste it, you can't see it, but it is frying you. It's making your nervous system kind of jumpy. It's making your blood-brain barrier break down. It's making your cells miscommunicate signals in terms of mineral content and gene activation or inactivation. It's really bad stuff. The human cellular matrix and living things can't tolerate this. So it's a tsunami of electrotoxins is what it's happening. So, Emil, tell us what we can do. What kind of equipment? Let's go. We've gone over it before, but let's run through it quickly. And then, by the way, if you have any questions out there, do call in 800-259-5791. I have these shows regularly with Emil because I don't think people grasp. They're always concerned, well, I need to drink clean filtered water, get a pure water system. They worry about, your organic food. Yes, make sure you have organic chicken so you don't get, arsenic poisoning. And try to eat foods that are, not going to bioconcentrate or be made genetically modified. But a lot of people just don't take notice of the fact that probably our greatest and most rapidly advancing toxin is electrotoxins. The rate of rise of toxins is bad, but it's rising faster for electrotoxins than any other form of otherwise potential dangerous toxins, even Fukushima. It's faster, believe it or not, the rise of smart meters, smart networks, Wi-Fi networks, and high-energy cell phones. Pretty bad, isn't it, Emil?
It's really bad. In fact, I sent you an email earlier today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it yet. It's so bad that 5 ninth-grade girls in Denmark were noticing that when they went to school after sleeping near their cell phones, that they had trouble concentrating the next day. So they devised an experiment to check on the biological effect of this microwave radiation coming from their cell phone. And with their teacher's permission, they got some watercress seeds and planted them. And they took several plantings and they put it in one room that didn't have a Wi-Fi router.
Right.
The other ones then put it in a room that did have a Wi-Fi router, and found in this very simple experiment, found that the ones in the room without the Wi-Fi germinated grew normally after 12 days, and that the ones that were seated next to the Wi-Fi router didn't germinate, didn't grow, didn't thrive, and did very poorly. So
right.
a ninth grade student had the self-awareness to realize that it was their cell phone causing their concentration problems in school. And, of course, they took steps to stop doing that, sleeping with a cell phone in the room, which all parents should insist that their children do not have a computer, do not have a laptop, do not have an iPad, do not have a cell phone, do not have a Wi-Fi router in or near the bedroom at all, ever. There's no reason somebody needs to sleep in that radiation. They're not on the device. They're not, or they shouldn't be in the middle of the night.
Well, yeah, you can turn it off. I tell people, turn off your Wi-Fi router. And a lot of people will put it through the wires. It's just simply unplug your main Wi-Fi, unplug what's called the rebroadcast router, because often they put through wires in your home. And it's bad. I mean, people don't understand. Its primary effects are three. The first is it raises the level of oxidative stress, any kind of stress, which means free radical load, which will cause peroxynitrate and hydroperoxy radicals. The second is it interferes with cellular communication, so you get demineralization. You lose magnesium and other minerals. And the third is epigenetic. It actually switches off and on genes that don't need to be switched off and on, so you get, multicentric astrogliomas, activation of microglia that can increase problems. You get destruction of the blood-brain barrier. All these things are very bad, and you can document them. They're not non-documentable. And when you see growth stopped, it means basically the normal signals that trigger off growth, like the release of growth hormones and chelons, they're called, in plants, they just stop. The cell gets paralyzed. The stress just turns it off. One of the first effects in humans is the release of melatonin and growth hormone. It stops. So someone who's exposed to high levels of radiation, their growth hormone levels are in their boots, even if they're teenagers or in their 20s. Not good. So I think the human race is at a nexus. I think it's a final convergence where we're destroying the planet itself. The ozone layer is going bye-bye. The magnetosphere is going bye-bye at 5% per year now, whether it's natural or it's aggravated by what we're doing. We're now instilling in our cities and towns and our schools so much radiation, it has an anticholinergic effect, so it affects the hippocampus. And circulation is causing troubles. Most people don't realize that free radical damage can cause strokes, heart attacks, hypertension, insomnia, all kinds of diseases we think are caused by things like salt, when really salt's an aggravator if you have regular salt, not sea salt, which is healthy. And radiation, harmonic radiation from Wi-Fi networks and cell phones, always bad. Always bad. I tested with Emil to see, are people really responding? Are they getting the simple things like a sterilizer to get rid of the dirty electricity? A lot of people have got stupid things like these curlicue fluorescent lights in their home now. They've got LEDs. They don't test for electrotoxicity. They have no idea that smart meters are frying them, and they get their latest iPhone 5S as super high energy, and they don't have a blocker. I've got one of these little pockets, for example. When I carry mine around, if it's in my pocket, it's got the barrier so there's no radiation coming back toward my, as it says in Monty Python's, my naughty bits. At the same time, it's sending out signals so it can receive a call or buzz or vibrate. I don't think people treat this with respect. It's like if I was to give you a big lump of radium, which, by the way, my grandfather had 7 jewelry stores, and he used to have a watchmaker. And years ago, before the new radium was really bad, back in the 50s or 40s, they'd have watchmakers painting dials of watches with radium. And you check it by turning off the lights to see if the dial really lit up, because you want to make sure that your people at home did not have to turn on the lights to find the time. Unfortunately, a lot of time when they were taking a brush to paint on the radium, they ended up with tongue cancer. Now, I think of smart meters as tongue cancer to the nth power. I think of Wi-Fi networks and cell towers on churches and schools as being suicidal to the human race, the intellectual capacity of the human race. Because think of your brain as not a brain, but let's just change the name to call it a liver in your skull. And you realize liver is a metabolic organ, so is your skull and your brain. And if you have toxic harmonic radiation jamming normal cellular communication and nutritional metabolism, how the hell do you expect to actually have a consistent or logical thought in your head or the ability to resist tyranny if you're sick? And a lot of people, I think, are sick and paralyzed by the toxic food they eat, the nutritional deficiencies they have, And, of course, the Wi-Fi networks that are basically make them a chronic insomniac or cause them to not have proper stage 4 restful sleep, not have normal neurotransmitter levels, and have a breakdown in their blood-brain barrier so that now their brain tissue is open to immune attack from their central immune system, which doesn't normally happen. It's what's called secure sight, just like your eyes. That's why if you traumatize an eye, you can actually get an autoimmune disease attack it, because the immune system hasn't seen eye proteins before. Interesting, hey? So I don't think people realize this, and I'm here to make you realize that I want you to get, at the very least, start off with a stetsorizer, meter, and capacitors. I want you to get, if you're worried about smart meters, a gigahertz solutions frequency analyzer. And if you're really worried about electropollution in your home, I want you to get the full oscilloscope and the magnetoscope, electroscope kind of sensing device that you can actually put in your computer and walk around your home, or put it on a tray at our cart and actually walk around and say, oh my gosh, look at this dimmer switch, it's causing electropollution. Oh my God, look at that LED light. Look at this, look at that. And then turn it off. Find out a way of actually shutting off the electropollution. I don't think people have any grasp whatsoever that the human biology and the biology of other living things like little bees are tied together, and the fact that plants can't germinate and grow in a classroom with Wi-Fi is cataclysmic. This is not like, a grade 9 student test because the kids wanted to kind of create false data. This is innocent children that had no idea whatsoever that Wi-Fi would be that dangerous. They did experiments with mice and found that if you put Wi-Fi, mice can't learn. That's why European schools, private schools, don't allow Wi-Fi. You know that too, right, Emil?
Certain ones do, for sure.
Most of the really advanced ones in Britain and elsewhere do not allow in Europe Wi-Fi anymore. They're not allowed.
That's correct.
And you can't sell. It's against the law in many European countries, including Switzerland and France and Germany, to sell cell phones to children, 14 or younger.
Correct.
It's against the law. If you do, you go to jail. Do not pass go. But here in America, they'll give you a Wi-Fi super network on your school. They'll give you a cute little phone that's got Mickey Mouse's face on it, or Goofy, or some other character like, let's say, Power Rangers, and tell you it's perfectly fine, which is nuts. And I think people should start taking notice of the fact that they have to start getting the equipment to test to say, is Deagle crazy? Prove it to me. Go test yourself. Stop wasting your time and energy listening to this program or anyone that's going to tell you the truth like we do. And then all you want to do is just either do nothing, or you want to attack the messenger because it's too unpleasant. I think of this almost like what I call the Georgia Strait syndrome, where people want to argue with me. And I had a recent argument with someone that says, well, I don't believe Fukushima is that dangerous. I don't think it's doing anything. I said, well, look at all these photos. And I send them a link, or they look at the link and see all the photos of the intertidal region and the Georgia Strait, and they say, well, they want to attack you, but they can't anymore. You've paralyzed them. It's almost like you hit them with one of those blow darts. So the Kararis entered their brain, and they're, I'd like to attack you, Deagle, but I'm paralyzed now. I can't even spit. And the fact is, I want people out there to stop wasting their time and realize we're in a biological extinction level event that we're creating. And this is slapped right on the side of your home. Smart meters are pumping it right through the wires in your home, so you're, maybe your clock beside your bed, your Wi-Fi network in your home. It's nuts. And people don't understand. That's why when the power goes out, people say, oh, I feel so relaxed. I never felt so relaxed. What's going on? I feel like, oh my gosh, everything's let down, like I'm no longer tense. What happened? The power is out. You hear this all the time, right, Emil? We do. We hear this all the time. It's one of the life-changing events which leads people to call us because, they have high blood pressure and sleeplessness and irritability and headaches, and they go to their doctor and they take pills and it never seems to go away. And then there's a blackout, 24 hours, 48 hours, and they find that their symptoms will subside, and they make the connection. And they make the connection, and then, of course, then the power comes back on, and the cellular stress goes on, and their blood pressure goes up, and and their insomnia comes back, and they've got to do something, and they've got to do something now. And so that's when they call us, and we're able to help them, to help them to get some meters to diagnose where it's coming from in their house, and then guide them through the steps that they can take, whether it's
turning off certain circuit breakers, or relocating the bed in the bedroom, or putting some shielding on the wall or on the bed, or wearing some shielded clothing, whatever it is in their circumstance.
Yeah, it's all going to vary. You got pretty well every kind of material. You got shielding clothing, shielding things on the bed or bed frame, because, wire mesh bed frames can act as like an antenna. You can put a wall to block someone's Wi-Fi network or smart meter radiation coming into your home. We did that 3 years ago and a half, when our next door neighbor, who's now gone, refused to remove a smart meter, and it was literally 75 feet or yards, from our bedroom. But I pointed my gigahertz solutions down over our embankment toward his home, and it was on his garage, and it was firing off every 4 to 11 seconds over 2,000 microwatts per square meter. Not good. So Dr. Deagle said, I'm going to get my little handyman guys to put up a shielding wall, which I get the materials from you at LSEMF. And lo and behold, point my little smart meter sensor, gigahertz solutions, and the radiation level dropped to 0. No radiation.
Right.
My new neighbor that moved in there, actually, I told him, like last week, I said, well, did you know why there's a wall up there beside our podocarpus, which are podocarpus they put up later, which are these kind of like a screen wall between our property and theirs? I said, because I'm blowing off the radiation back toward you. I said, you may or may not know that these things are bad. And they said, well, we have very low power bill. I said, why is that? I said, well, because we have these curlicue lights and LEDs all over our home. I said, well, how are you feeling? He said, not good. I gained 25 pounds. I think I'm turning diabetic. My blood pressure's up through the ceiling. I said, big surprise. That's the next door neighbor. How awful. Basically, how awful. But guess what? The people, the powers that be, these maniacs, including George Bush, who outlawed other bulbs, and now the current fool in the White House, he would look good in a fool costume, but, the fool for the kings of Europe, that would be the abominator, I call. They've outlawed all bulbs. The only bulbs now made in the world that are incandescent are made in China, and it's actually illegal to bring them in here. These many of the denominations. Now, the latest one they eliminated, I think, is a 60-watt bulb. The 100 watts have been gone like 2.5, 3 years now. So if you want to get these in here, you got to go through Amazon, and you can get a few squeaked in, but it's the last of production. And when the stores run out of them, they can't bring in more because it's illegal. It's illegal for Home Depot and these other stores. They've got to bring in
Cardovite contains.
Back to the Nutrimedical report. We want to thank all those people who get all of their nutraceuticals exclusively for Nutrimedical. I do not endorse any nutraceuticals other than what we put forward. I do not endorse protocols other than ours, and which are constantly evolving, by the way, because we also customize the protocol to each person's individual needs. And I will recommend specific medical tests, imaging tests, advanced functional medicine tests, etc. One of the therapies that I particularly like, and I'm now able to rearrange my schedule enough that I get in at least 45 minutes to an hour before the show every day to get in my hyperbaric chamber. And I have an oxygen concentrator, too, so I can put it on the top of one of the 2 concentrator pumps. An extra 6 liters a minute of oxygen, 100%. That raises the total chamber percentage probably 4 or 5%, from 21 to 25 or 26%. It's very calming, it's very brain activating, it's very anti-inflammatory, it's very detoxifying. There's nothing like having the ability to amplify your nutritional status, your oxidative status, your detox status, than with mild hyperbaric oxygen. It's extremely important for any health condition whatsoever, just maintenance of good health. Especially as you get older. In our world, it's so toxic. If you're not detoxifying, if you're not oxygenating your tissues, and I call it, the analogy is a thing called the power of ones: oxygen, nutrimeds, energetic technology, and stem cells. And stem cell type therapies like our ionic silver, called Silver 100, our Supernox, our Indiamese, Mountain Red Velvet, our ergothioneine, and Myco D2, which has ergothioneine for your stem cells. Oxygen is really important. It's right at the top of the list. And it perfuses tissues that can't be carried oxygen through hemoglobin because there's very poor microcirculation in some remote sites in your body. And if you improve that circulation, you're going to improve stem cell activation. We now know that mild hyperbaric oxygen, one of its primary things is stem cell migration and activation. So if you want to heal anything in your body, you got to perfuse it with oxygen that goes beyond the capacity of the hemoglobin molecule in your blood to carry it there. So tell us more about the ergonomics. What makes your chambers so awesome? There's a whole series of features we mentioned periodically as to why they're so good. They're quieter, they're cooler because of special cooling elements. They're brighter because they have all the translucent material and the big windows. You have the only vertical dives. I have the vertical grand dive. It's amazing. You can go in there and I can sit with a director's chair, and I have a computer desk in there so I can listen to music while I do emails or consults. I have a triangular chair as well, so if I want my daughter or somebody else to sit in there. And one of my friends is a criminal defense attorney, and his wife is a district attorney. Often like to come down, they're neighbors, and they'll come down and actually hang out in the chamber for an hour, and they come out, whoa, do I ever feel good now after that? He's seriously stressed out. These are what we call type A adrenaline people. And if you want to calm down, if you want to detox, if you want to just kind of chill, there's nothing like listening to quieting music, even yoga type music, doing deep breathing exercises, just relaxing and chilling, even if you're not reading or doing something. But your chambers are the best. So can you give us more of the features?
Yes. What we have done is listen to our customers. A lot of companies say they do that, but we actually fly out to their sites when they have a complaint or concern. Then we create a solution and integrate that. One was my kids don't want to go in the chamber because they get bored, so we integrated a stereo system into the walls of the chamber.
Right.
Another is I don't like it dark, so we selected a very bright material that allows lots of light through. Another said, I want it to be safe. I'm worried. This thing gets rock hard. Is it going to tear apart? So we added belts, more for them to see that it is a secure chamber. We added an airtight zipper so you don't have a foam seal that you have to massage to get the chamber to pressurize.
Right.
We've added a gauge inside. Again, not necessary because our relief valves are factory tested to open exactly at 4.4, but to give that reinforcement to the person inside. Oh, I'm almost to pressure. Oh, or it's released enough for me to open the zipper and get out.
Right.
We added a dump valve that's idiot-proof. You can't turn it the wrong way. You need to get out, you turn it left or right, and it opens up, depressurizing the chamber. We have a patent pending on our vertical mounting system, which you love in your chamber. And
right.
We have a patent pending on our passive coolers. Silence the chamber so that it is dead quiet.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the amazing thing to me about the chambers is that all the kinds of ranges of objections as to why you would not want to use these type of chambers, which you raise with any other type of mild hyperbaric chamber, and especially the 100% oxygen chambers. They're often very clear, plastic. You feel like you're inside a bubble. You're very restricted. You have to lay in a position. Often these chambers are, laying down in a position for an hour or more, and you're under very high pressure, so it's 100% oxygen. What we were doing when we had a hyperbaric clinic in Denver is we would give people an injection of melatonin and other antioxidants to protect them against the oxidative stress of 100% oxygen. Oxygen's good, but even when someone gets toxic from too much 100% oxygen, the treatment is mild hyperbarics. The treatment for the bends, ideally, is mild hyperbarics. So basically, every diving boat that takes the divers out to dive and could potentially get bends for anybody, even in moderate depths, should have one of these mild chambers. You just pop somebody in there, get them up to moderate pressures, and it'll help to counteract the bends. It makes nitrogen go back into solution rather than form bubbles. It's pretty neat, isn't it? It's amazing how I have people that have retinal problems that say, my God, my vision's getting better. Or I talked to a gentleman this morning who had an aneurysm with a lacunar infarct, where he basically probably leaked blood in an area probably around the middle cerebral artery or the geniculate nucleus, where the motor tracts, the eye tracts, the visual tracts carry from the back of the eye through the optic nerve head to the sphenopalatine fossa behind his eyes and off to the optic cortex. And he probably had some injury to some metabolic pathways, and the oxygen will help to repair that. Same way when we talk about these professional football players, everybody that gets bonked on the head should immediately be taken off the field and should be put in a mild hyperbaric chamber. Maybe even add to that a transcranial lumen photon or somopulse to try to increase brain oxygen and uptake, and take nutraceuticals to stop free radical induction of the microglia, where free radicals are going to cause brain damage and break down the blood-brain barrier. This is pretty straightforward, but the first step, the absolute ideal step, is mild hyperbaric oxygen. as I said before, I thought good marketing today is in the future, and you'll probably be the first to innovate it, is I called a hyperbaric cafe, where, you walk into a cafe at the airport that's 1.3 atmospheres, and you can go in and get a barista to make you a nice caffeinated drink while you're at 1.3 atmospheres, and maybe even augment the oxygen a few percent too. So, and when you have ambulances, why don't they have ambulances with mild hyperbaric, or burn units where you're not in a burn unit at normal pressure? If you're at Mile High in Denver, you want to have a mild hyperbaric burn unit, where when the patient comes in there and they've got 60% burns, grade, level 2 or second degree burns, and you're using pig skin or artificial skin grafts to close off their skin, you'd probably do much better, not only reverse protection, but under mild hyperbarics. So I see a lot of things, even post-op recovery. People should be mild hyperbarics a lot of time. In fact, I think to a great extent, entire hospitals should be a sealed hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah, especially the operating room. The most fascinating use I heard of was down in Central America. The hospitals were on the Pacific coast, but the great diving was on the Atlantic coast. So when a diver had the bends, they sent a helicopter to take him over the mountains. So they put a chamber on the helicopter so it kept them at sea level while they were transporting him.
Isn't that interesting? That is too clever. That's really, really clever. That's isn't it funny? So the big hospitals are on the Pacific side with the hyperbaric chambers and so on, and the diving is in the Atlantic side. That's funny. Yeah, I think we can be creative in a lot of these things. 80%, by the way, of all hyperbaric chambers in the world are in China, and they use it for everything: stroke, heart attack, peripheral vascular disease, retinal problems, bone infections, detox from radiation exposure, chemotherapy. In fact, the treatment for chemo brain or radiation-induced cerebritis of the brain is mild hyperbaric oxygen. The treatment for peripheral neuropathy, the treatment for congestive heart failure is not only proline infrared sauna and lumen photon and other therapies to support stem cells, including detox, but it's mild hyperbaric oxygen. I mean, I don't know any health condition, head to toe, any health condition, from toenail fungus to brain injury to retinopathy, that's not made better with mild hyperbaric oxygen. The question should be in the future, do you have a shower? Do you have a tub? Do you have a dishwasher? Do you have a mild hyperbaric chamber in your home? Do you want to stay well? And do you use it regularly? Your chambers you'd use because they're fun, you feel great, you feel detox, you feel relaxed, you feel defused, if you want to call it, from the stress. It's a de-stress chamber too, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Amazing. And of course the financing is available. You retain 70% of the value after even a couple of years. You can't beat it. These are affordable, usable, and portable, and you can do it safely at home. Safely at home. Call us and we'll give you all the information.